What the bloody hell did I just watch? I can barely fathom what the writers were thinking when they came up with the concept for this movie. 2.5 hours of ineptly sneaky preaching of woke politics and Hollywood nonsense that felt like 4.5 hours. I do my best to try and watch things that I will enjoy, which is a hard task these days, what with the state of modern politics and the entertainment industry in particular, and I heard that the Eternals movie was going to be pretty woke. After finding out that they had decided to race swap and gender swap various characters, it was clear that this was not intended to be a faithful adaptation, which would not in normal years be a problem, as studios have to have some artistic license. But you would have thought that at least the main characters would resemble those in the comics, but no, they didn't even bother with the same hair colours. None of this is a big deal though, because almost nobody has ever heard of the Eternals in the first place. Out of all of the Marvel properties, it is one of the last that anyone would have expected to get a movie, and there is a very good reason for that, and the answer is diversity. They had no doubt been pretty disappointed by the Avengers because they were mostly the W word. And you know what is worse? They are mostly male. By this time, Hollywood would be having some kind of morally outraged seizure over the sheer lack of diversity stemming from the fact that when Marvel started the cinematic universe, the woke, far-left, psychotic, anti-straight W-word men hadn't taken hold yet, so they were actually reasonably interested in making good movies. But Hollywood, who have always had a strangely inflated opinion of their cultural importance, saw what was happening in various other parts of society and thought to themselves, you know what, we can do that. And we can be way more in your face and annoying than run-of-the-mill activists and college professors. So they started diversifying and feminizing their movies, which essentially means swapping good actors for actors that will make the weirdos on Twitter happy. Swapping male roles for women's roles, and trying to make us believe that a bunch of little girls can beat up masculine men. Not your average soy-faced weedy can't change a spare wheel or build my own furniture type male stand-in. Men. 6 foot full of muscles, you know the kind. So now here we find ourselves with lots of movies featuring female directors, whether they are the best person for the job or not. And don't get me wrong, there have been a lot of good movies with female directors, and a lot of the time you had no idea, because they were given the job with no fanfare. They weren't ticks in a box. Movies like Big, Point Break, Wayne's World, Sleepless in Seattle, American Psycho, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. But now, we're forced to endure movies made by people who were simply not the best person for the job. In fact, they weren't even the second or third best, because they were picked for their diversity value over their talent. And if I was one of those people, I would be pissed off that that was the case, although I would probably still have taken the job. After all, the job is a job, but I would rather have gotten it through my own inherent value rather than my political position and appearance. And that is where Eternals comes from. It is the Avengers for people who despise what the original comic book characters stood for and want to subvert and bend the genre to their political will. I thought we would have to wait for Thor Love and Thunder for this aspect to become clear, but Eternals beat it to the punch. I would like to think that this is simply a vanity project intended for the supporters and hangers-on of the Hollywood wokerati who are currently in control of the industry, but after viewing it you can tell that they really believed that this was supposed to be mainstream. They thought they could make money from this, that they thought that we, the general public, would support their tone-deaf storytelling and cringe-inducing diversity preaching. But before I get started, or at least continue ranting, please consider subscribing as that would really help me out, and if you like this content, give it a like. Okay, on with, well, whatever this is. And I would love to stop there and say, well, there you go folks, what do you expect from modern Hollywood? But there is more than just diversity quotas and box ticking. There is the story itself. It felt like I was watching 2.5 hours of visual lift music. It meant nothing and was going nowhere. It was as though the writers had been getting high on Hammond organ music. You would have thought that after they had read what must have been the most boring script in the world, the producers and director would have thought to themselves, okay, so this is trash, let's pay some talented writers to give us something we can sell. But that was before the dark times, before the milkshakes, before the pink hair brigade got given carte blanche to destroy the comic book industry, and by proxy anything related to it. This is why Marvel movies have gone downhill so fast that Phase 4 is looking more like a train wreck every day. Each movie is a carriage and we can see them one by one crashing off of the rails, leaving a trail of destruction behind them, and Disney itself, the locomotive, steaming on, oblivious to the carnage being wrought behind it as it makes its way closer and closer to the unfinished bridge and its plunge to the bottomless gorge of self-inflicted irrelevance. The question is whether common sense will win out and they will finish the bridge, or whether their obsession with their woke agenda will keep them blindfolded and deaf to reason until they're nothing but yet another cautionary tale. The movie is so bloody bad. The dialogue is mind-meltingly terrible and makes almost no attempt to build the characters, which is insane considering the running length of this movie. In 2.5 hours, they couldn't manage to thoroughly introduce a single character. I started to forget that some of them were even there. They were just so unimportant and didn't drive the story forward. Even the main characters, who were on screen most of the time, didn't seem to be driving the story. It just kind of wandered along and stuff occasionally happened on screen. Not important stuff, just stuff. The movie has no sense of urgency, and even though a cataclysmic event is about to take place, it doesn't feel like it, and we're given no reason to care. I get the feeling that we're supposed to give a crap about the bad guys who are called the Deviants, which the Eternals have been sent to eliminate or something like that. But honestly, by the time that aspect of the storyline came around, I didn't care about the Eternals, let alone some monster things. It would have been a sweet relief if the Celestial had destroyed the world and freed us all from the purgatory of having to sit and watch the slow-motion, angst-driven style of world-saving that the Eternals seem to prefer. Another thing we are seriously expected to believe is that the Celestial Arishem decided to make some very randomly designed robots. Why would he make some of them defective, so that one of them is always the size of a child? One of them is gay, one of them is deaf and has to use sign language. Surely someone who is basically all-powerful could manage to make them all perfect. And why did he make them all individuals? What was the purpose? It is completely incoherent. It drove me crazy trying to figure it out. Why did he bother with sex at all? Why did he have various skin colours and ethnic features and completely random accents? It was all gibberish. And then we have the actors themselves, who were pretty much all phoning it in, which was probably the result of the characters being so shallow that if they were a swimming pool they would have been baby safe. Also, I'm starting to wonder if Gemma Chan is really a robot, because she was pretty convincing in Humans, and has managed to stay in character ever since, which is either some impressive method acting, or she really is a robot sent from the future. She has one tone to her voice, one expression, one style of acting. If anyone knows a movie where she actually does appear human, please let me know in the comments. In fact, the only actor in this movie that did stand out slightly was Kumail Nanjiani as Kingo, who was mildly amusing and had some sort of personality, which for this movie is extremely high praise. Richard Madden has become something of a fan favourite these days, although I have no idea why. I tried watching Bodyguard, but after a couple of episodes, I started to feel as though I was eating porridge with no sugar in it. It was bland and uninteresting. I'm sure he can be great in something, but hashtag not my James Bond. This movie truly has nothing to offer, and I can't help but wonder if this is the beginning of the end for Disney's dalliance with the woke Hollywood agenda, or will Disney double down and triple down, and from here on out, everything they touch turns to gold-plated excrement. Disney have a lot on the way, and they are pushing their Marvel properties hard, but they aren't pushing them in a direction that will appeal to fans. Nor are they interested in appealing to the wider audience of normies. They instead seem to have focused on a very specific group of people, who can usually be found on Twitter, shouting down reasonable people for having reasonable opinions. Eternals isn't the worst movie I've ever seen, but it was one of the most incoherent. It makes no sense because the creators of this movie had very different priorities than simply making a good movie. This has been Movie Sucks signing out. Leave a like, share, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the flip side.